Good morning. It is so good to see you all here. And although it's a bit cold and nippy up in Gidgee where I am, Bruce, come down here and you can feel the warmth of the weather and the warmth of God's church as we gather together. A couple of announcements I need to just make for church keeping. One is that the board passed a message around the Sabbath school classes this morning, and I'm just checking that it got there, and that is that we are on the hunt for someone to lead up in Sabbath school. We need a Sabbath school superintendent for our church, and we were just wondering if there's someone from your class or someone that you know that can lead us in this area. And so if that's the case, can you please see Jane straight after the church service, and then we'll work things from there. The other thing is that as of the first Sabbath in July, we started our brand new teams. And so if you put your name down on a team, I hope that by now your leader has got in touch with you and that you're functioning as a team. And our whole focus of leadership, our whole focus of ministry in church is through teams and teamwork. And so each team leader has a job description, and I'll be meeting with them individually to go through that because that's their target, that's their KPIs that we want them to meet this year. And they'll share that description with you, and then we'll go from there. So at the moment, where am I working at? I'm meeting with the leaders at the moment, one-on-one, and sharing and praying and being with them. So we're really taking this very seriously, and I hope that you do too. As I move through the church, as I move through the foyer, as I fellowship with lunch, my first or last sentence will be to you, what team are you on? Where do you fit into the game? What team are you with? And that's the new phrase that I'll be asking you. And I hope to hear a positive answer. I'm on the such and such team, and we fit into Swan Valley Seventh-day Adventist Church because we do this, this and this. If we can answer that this month, then I think we've achieved a lot. I see some of you have been taking sermon notes. I pulled out my sermon note page again, photocopy of 20. They are out on the information table by the office door there. Take us through. It'll go through the main points that you want to take down from the sermon and the points that I want to leave you with. This sermon is a part of the series we have this quarter called Dinner with Jesus. And it's a part of a 3-part sermon that I've preached. And those of you that have been here, those of you that are watching online, I hope that you have seen the progress over the last 2 sermons. Our very first sermon to start off our year was about Mephibosheth and how David called him to the table. Our message from that is that God saves through grace. We are bearers of grace. Now, that's the gospel commission. That's our message that we take to the world. In my sermon last Sabbath, I shared with you what that world is. We use the word gutter because I want to wake you up. The gutter is the place where you were before you found Jesus. The place where your friends are who don't know Jesus. It's a place where we're most unlikely to go. But we are called with the gospel commission, and by the example of Jesus, through dinners with Jesus and through his life in the Gospels, we are called to take the message of grace to our gutters. And today's sermon is part 3. How do we do that? How do we do that? And I hope that by the end of the sermon, you'll know very, very clearly how we do that. A man took a photo of a man stealing grapes from his property. And he went to the owner of the property, and he said, intending to show him the evidence, He said, this man's stealing grapes from your property. I caught him. Here's a photograph I took. Took the photo out and it exposed, and he found no evidence of this man taking the photo. It had been blotted out. The face of this man had been blotted out. And so God blots out the sin of those who come to him through mercy and grace. That's the message that we as God's church in today's world are to give to the world. That is present truth. It's all about sharing life together around this great message of grace. Jesus shows us how the gospel travels to the world in Luke 7:34. Come there with me, please. Luke 7:34. Luke 7:34. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. This is how the gospel goes to the world. This is how Jesus brought the gospel to his world. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. Now, we find here some interesting points coming from here. The Son of Man. Where have you heard that before? There's 3 times in the Gospels where it mentions the Son of Man came. The Son of Man came. One of them is to seek and save that which is lost. And I've just forgotten the other one, but there's 3 times where the phrase, the Son of Man came, is used in the Bible. This is the 3rd one. And when you think of the word Son of Man, it takes you back to the book of Daniel, where it mentions there, Daniel presents the Son of Man as one who comes before God to receive authority over nations. If you boil down Daniel's definition that he's bringing out and portraying to us of who the Son of Man is, it's one who comes before God to receive authority over the nations. Now, here Luke announces the Son of Man has come, not with an army of angels, not with the clouds of heaven, not with blazing glory, as the Jews expected him to come. He comes eating and drinking. Now, in our word there, it uses the word glutton and drunkard. In other words, he's on the excessive side of eating and drinking. He goes the whole course, and on the excessive side of things. And they didn't expect Jesus to do this. He has totally gone outside of their framework that Jesus was meant to be in. He's come instead to seek and save that which is lost through parties. He's come to seek that which is lost through parties. And that's what gets them. That's what gets them the most. Now, I'm stuck to my pulpit if I can't get this sorted out quickly, Ben. I'll just give it a go. I think we're right. Luke 5:27-32 is our main passage for today about Jesus being a drunkard and overeating at a party. Luke 5:27-32. Matthew, Mark, Luke 5:27-32. After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax office and said to him, "Follow me." So he, leaving everything behind, he got up and began to follow him. Then Levi hosted a grand banquet for him at his house. Now there was a large crowd of tax collectors and others who were guests with them. But the Pharisee and their scribes were complaining to his disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus replied to them, "It's not those who are healthy that need a doctor, but those who are sick. I have come to call the righteous, not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." So we find here in our passage, Jesus as he went. Now that's a part of what the Gospel Commission tells us to do. And when you break down into that Greek word, it says, "as you go." Now, here we find Jesus, an example here, he's going. And it says, as he's going, he sees a tax collector named Levi. Now, tax collectors, they are pretty low. They were down there with the lowest of low as far as careers go. They were despised and thought of as low by both the Romans and the Jews. And what we find is that they were there to collect about a 2.5% of all goods as you're coming and going from the temple. They would meet you and grab you. And they would add their excess on top of that, because they were oftentimes very, very fraudulent in their works and in their dealings in using money. Now, we find that the word for tax is M-O-K-K-H-E-R in the Greek, mokher. And we find that there's a few examples of tax collectors in the Bible. They should have been Romans, but the Romans were too smart for this. If they sent their own people into Jerusalem to collect the tax, they get killed. So what they're doing is they are training up and they are selling franchises to Jewish men and getting them to go back into their communities and do the tax business with their own people. Pretty smart thinking. If you're a Roman, you get the money and you keep peace in the community. Now, but these men weren't still very well liked by their own people. They were tolerated because they were on the edge. They're something you had to have around but didn't like them. And so we find that the man who was up the tree, Zacchaeus, he was a big mocker. He was a guy who was in charge of about a number of 4 or 5 at least other tax collectors underneath him. He was a big one. Levi here was a little one. He may have worked for one of the big tax collectors or mockers, or he may have worked for himself. But what it seems that this guy was doing was he was going around following Jesus and setting up his little tax booth and nabbing people who had come to see Jesus. And so people would come to see Jesus but be stuck with this man plying his trade. There's a lesson, a faith lesson there for us as church people. Do people come to see Jesus through us, through the last day church, Seventh-day Adventists? And do they get stuck and haunted by people like Levi who are nabbing them while they're on their way to try and find Jesus? I wonder, are we as God's Christians called to follow him? Are we blockages in the system or conduits? Now we find this tax collector, he had an interesting name, Levi. Levi was from a group of people in the tribes of Israel. And he was obviously not living up to his name, because the tribe of Levi was where the priests of Israel came from. And they would go to the temple and help offer sacrifices for the people. They were the go-between between God and man, between God and the people. And they would assist in finding God. Very interesting thought coming here. Very interesting thought. Levi, his parents may have called him because they had the hope in their hearts that he would become the go-between for the people, between God and the people. But we find that along the walk of life, he may have lost his way and has become a go-between between the Jewish people and the Romans through tax collecting. Whatever his sin was, Jesus found him there. Jesus found him there. Whatever his motive was for following Jesus, bringing in the money, Jesus found him there. Because that was Levi's gutter. That was Levi's gutter. And it says there, Jesus found him and called him and said, what? Stop your money changing. Get out of the gutters. Stop following me around under pretense. Get your life together. No, he said, follow me. He doesn't care about Levi's habits and his past and what he is doing, no matter how much that interests us at times. He simply says, follow me. And Jesus draws him. And Jesus draws him. There are many around Midland area here who the Holy Spirit is guiding them, and they're hearing the voice of Jesus, follow me, follow me. And they're waiting for God's church to find the gutter to lead them on their God-given mission. We find here in the passage that he followed Jesus. He became a part of Jesus' disciples. And it says he left everything behind. The cost of following Jesus takes everything. And all too often we want to leave some things for us. Jesus says, no. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're working, whatever you're trying to do, whatever your plans and schemes are, they're mine now. When you come to follow me. And that's the same with you and I 2,000 years away from Levi. And the question comes to us, have we given over to Jesus our everything? Or are we keeping part of our lives for ourselves? Or are we playing games with Jesus, following him from a distance, but setting up our own tax collector booths for our own benefit? Levi is a great example to us. He made it. He follows Jesus. He leaves everything. And what does he do? He takes Jesus to his gutter. Verse 29. Then Levi hosted a great banquet for him at his house. Now there was a large crowd of tax collectors and others who were guests with them. But the Pharisees and the scribes were complaining to his disciples, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? We find here that Levi falls in love with Jesus, answers the call of Jesus, follow me, leaves everything and takes Jesus with him to his gutter, to his friends, the friends who were a part of his former work life, the tax collectors. And he throws a party for them and invites Jesus into his party. Now, in the Gospels, we'll find in our two types of feasts. One was a massive banquet, and you'd have planned guests lists, and it was a big party and would go on for hours. That's the type of party we studied in our sermon last Saturday. And then that was the banquet. And then there was the hospitality meal, which was mainly 1 or 2, 3, 4 people together having a meal together. Now, Jesus was present at both types of those meals in the New Testament. And we find both types of those meals are needed in sharing the gospel of Jesus to our gutters. And we will find now, as we preach our remainder of our series of sermons on Dinner with Jesus, we're going to people and we're finding messages out of each of these people Jesus had a party with. We'll find examples of 5 parties of a banquet, and we'll find examples of 5 parties of hospitality. Both involve food, both involve going back to the gutter, and both involved Jesus. We will then discover that the gospel rides on relationships and food. The gospel rides on relationships and food. And today, Levi is screaming out to you and I through his dinner with Jesus. He's screaming out to you and I, don't be a go-between. Don't be like me in my former life of going between the Romans and the Jews. Don't be like my former life where I should have been a go-between between God and man. I went the wrong way. I've now come home. I'm now a go-between between God and man. Church, there's an example in the life of Levi for you and I to follow. We are called to a promise. We are called to a prophetic mission. We are go-betweens between God and man, taking Jesus to the world, taking Jesus to our gutters. That's our work, and that's our message we get from Levi. Levi also teaches us a very important lesson in that we need to be involved with our former friends, our unchurched people. That's where we take Jesus back to. And yet all too often as Adventists, we cut them off and we become a club. I know I did. And that's why I have had to go out to Midland Meals to find people that I can once again start the cycle of taking the gospel to the gutter through food. You may be like me and have been an Adventist for all your life, and there's a blockage, a cut in that gutter to food, grace, experience that all must go through. You must find your gutter. You must find one where Jesus can work through you. It's often called your holy discontent. Your holy discontent is something that goes on in the world around you that you just can't handle. With me, I can't handle going to bed at night knowing there are people in my city that are hungry and cold and lonely. And so I take Jesus there. It might be different for you, and it will be. And we need to set up in our church ministries between our lovely building here where we're called to celebrate on Sabbath mornings and learn how to take Jesus back to our gutters, get resources here and fired up. But we need to find and build our gutters. Can you imagine if there was at least 10 to a dozen of us taking people back out, Jesus back out to our gutters? What an amazing church experience we would have. And yet I believe that that is what Jesus set up here for us to see through the dinner with Levi. He says there, the sinners need the doctor, not the other way around. Why? Why? Because doctors fix things. Doctors fix things. And that's the business that we need to be around and about. And so in Matthew 19, recounting the story, Jesus says, go learn to the Pharisees. Now, it's almost a slap in the face for them. Because one, why are they there at this party? Two, what are they doing there criticising Jesus? And then three, why did Jesus dare tell them to go and learn? Because they missed the point totally. And sometimes we can jump in their little circle as well and miss the point totally. The gospel is not about knowledge. And they thought that the gospel that they had taken all the world was all about knowledge. You have to know the truth, and the truth sets you free. And they are all about doing the right things because of the knowledge that you have. Whereas we learn from the story that it's not about knowledge. Jesus is in the business of transformation. Transformation. And that is the switch of the gears that we as God's last day church need to switch into. Am I imparting transformation? Do people, when they come into my circle, when they share with me, do they leave changed because they see the love of Jesus in my heart? And if you question that, then in our heritage, there's this book called Desire of Ages, and it has a quote in there, I can pick it up if I need to for you, where it says that's what Jesus did and what he was all about. And so, Levi and his interaction with Jesus and their interaction with the Pharisees teaches us that if we're to take the gospel to our gutters, it needs to be through a transformed life that imparts a transformation of Jesus to others through the power of the Holy Spirit. Then I need to drill down just one more thing. This morning, if you find yourself in God's church, worshipping here with us as God's people, and you say, hey, I'm in the gutter. I'm finding myself sin sick. Something's happened to me, and it's stopping me following Jesus how I really ought to and how I really want to. My challenge to you is come to Jesus. Come to Jesus just as you are. And hear him speak the words he spoke to Levi, follow me. Then follow Jesus and watch him transform your life into something beautiful. In this story, we find a number of characters. You've got Levi, you've got Jesus, you've got the Pharisees, you've got the party people. And the question I want to ask you this morning is, where do you find yourself in the story? Because Jesus wants to meet you there. Whether you're a Pharisee, whether you're a Levi, whether you're a party goer, whether you're a disciple of Jesus, Jesus wants to meet you there and use your life to bring about transformation in your world and his world. And so, in the conclusion of this 3-part series that I've given you, I've shared with you how to witness, how to share our faith. I've shared with you how I do it. I share with you the challenge of how I'd like to see you do it and lead you as your pastor. When you boil it down, it comes down to a few words. Bearers of grace to people not like me around food.